This is slide 2 in our westward expansion unit. If you'll recall, in slide 1 we talked about sort of how the white government and the white U.S. military goes about getting the land from the Native Americans. So in this slide and the couple following it here, let's talk about some of those examples of getting that land. Okay, in the Indian Wars. Right? We're going to look at kind of four main topics here today. The first one, Sand Creek. Okay? This is in Colorado, 1864. So it's near the end of the Civil War. Civil War is going on while this is happening. This one involved the Cheyenne Indians. And is kind of summed up here. If you notice up in the top right-hand corner of the slide here, this the painting up here, the depiction of Sand Creek, about 400 Cheyenne had been evading the U.S. military. The cavalry had been chasing them around, and the Cheyenne eventually give up. And thought they had been promised immunity. So they make camp at Sand Creek in Colorado. They raise a white flag of surrender. They raise even an American flag to show they're willing to now give up, be good, loyal American citizens and all of that. They are surrounded by the U.S. military, who opens fire. Okay? All of the Cheyenne, all 400 of them, are killed. Murdered in cold blood, really. They were trying to surrender, had given up, and the U.S. military, just very frustrated, having chased them all over the place, couldn't catch them. Finally they do, and rather than accept a surrender, they kill the Cheyenne. So sometimes it's known as the massacre at Sand Creek. Okay. These next three bullet points here all deal with kind of one culminating topic. So we'll kind of cover these three as one here. Okay. The first one deals with the yellow line on the map here, the Bozeman Trail. Okay. White settlers were clearing the trail through Wyoming. As you can see, it goes from Wyoming up into Montana. But clearing the trail through Wyoming when a Sioux war party killed 81 people, okay, while trying to clear this trail to get to gold fields up in Montana. Okay. It takes place in the Bighorn Mountains, okay, which are kind of down here in the northern part of Wyoming, right here along the Bozeman Trail. Those are the Bighorn Mountains right there. Okay. Once that happens, okay, the U.S. military moves in to deal with the Sioux. Okay. They work out a treaty, okay, in which the Sioux agreed to give up the Bozeman Trail here. In exchange, the Sioux would get land over here, right, near the Black Hills of modern-day South Dakota. Back then it was just the Dakota Territory. But the Black Hills right here are sacred to the Sioux. So they would be given this land kind of over in this area, the Great Sioux Northern Reservation, it would come to be called. And in exchange, they would allow the trail to be built here. Now, all was going fine. Treaty had been signed and negotiated until gold was discovered in the Black Hills. Right? Again, back over here. And once gold is discovered in the Black Hills, settlers stop wanting to go up here into Montana, and gold prospectors and settlers start wanting to go over here into the Black Hills. The problem is the U.S. government has just given the Black Hills to the Sioux. but the settlers, the gold rushers, will not be denied. Right? So they start making their way into the Black Hills. And when they do, the U.S. Army goes with them to chase the Sioux out of the Black Hills, which is where we had just sent them. So now we're chasing them out. Okay? The Sioux flee the Black Hills and they head west toward Wyoming, okay? Pursued by the man here in the picture, General George Custer, C-U-S-T-E-R, General George Custer, okay, will pursue the Sioux Indians out of the Black Hills to the west. Okay? Now, Custer will catch up with the Sioux near the northern part of the Bighorn Mountains, right up here, just into Montana. Okay? At a place called the Little Bighorn. It's a river. Okay? Now, this river right here that you see under the little laser pointer there, the dot, that's the Bighorn River right there. Okay? There is a tributary of the Bighorn River right along here, the Little Bighorn River right there. That's where Custer catches up with the Sioux. Okay? Now, you see the book cover here, Last Stand at Little Bighorn. Okay? This is Custer. This is the Sioux chief Sitting Bull. Excuse me. This is Sitting Bull right here. Okay? Custer is chasing Sitting Bull and the Sioux, who have fled the Black Hills, headed west, and he catches up with them along the Little Bighorn River. This turns into a very famous battle here, the Battle of Little Bighorn. Sometimes it's known as Custer's Last Stand, for a reason we'll see here in just a moment. Okay? Custer finds out that the Sioux are camped along the Little Bighorn River. Okay? He's chasing about 215 Sioux warriors. Okay? He's chasing about 250 Sioux. Custer has about 215 men. But he figures, we're the army. They've got a few more men than we do. It's not a problem. So Custer, without doing any really sort of reconnaissance, scouting, anything like that, will send his 215 men to the Little Bighorn River to deal with Sitting Bull. What he does not realize is that Sitting Bull and his 250 Indians have met up with other tribes, okay? Particularly one, a very large tribe here, led by Crazy Horse. So back to the book cover here, Last Stand at Little Bighorn, Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse battle Custer. Okay, this is this is the worst military defeat in U.S. history, because Custer ends up not attacking 250 men like he thought he was going to. He ends up attacking what turns out to be about 2,500 Indians. 2,500. All of Custer's men, to the very last man, are wiped out by Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse at Little Bighorn. No American is left alive at the end of this battle. That's why it's seen as the worst battle in American military history, because nobody survives on the American side. Rumor has it the only American to come out of this battle alive was Custer's horse. I don't know if that's true or not, but it makes for an interesting story. So anyway, Custer's Last Stand. Okay. All right, let's turn our attention here to another story, this one a very sad story, of the Nez Perce Indians. The Nez Perce. They are led by the man here in the bottom left-hand corner, Chief Joseph. Chief Joseph, Joseph. He is named by missionaries. Okay, that's where he gets his name. The Nez Perce are typically a very much a peace-loving tribe. They're not warlike. They're not they don't go looking for trouble. They don't back down from a fight, but they don't go starting one either. Okay, we're talking about sort of a northwest here, Idaho, Washington, Oregon, that area. Okay. The Nez Perce, some braves in a Nez Perce tribe, led by Chief Joseph, got into a fight with some soldiers. Several soldiers were killed. So the U.S. Army decides they're going to make an example of Chief Joseph and the Nez Perce. Well, Chief Joseph decides they are not going to go just willingly. So they run. They take off. And ultimately they try to get to Canada and freedom. Okay. They will evade being captured. They will flee the military and escape for about 3 months. For 3 months, they're leading the U.S. cavalry on a chase here through the Rocky Mountains to try to get to Canada. Chief Joseph and his people will cover about 1,700 miles on foot, most of the people on foot. Now you think, okay, well, you got the Indians versus the cavalry, everybody's on horses riding around. No, you're thinking the typical Hollywood image of Indians here. What you don't always think of when you think of Native Americans and the Indians are the children, or the women, or the elderly. You've got Grandma and Grandpa Indian here, old Aunt and Uncle Indian. Chief Joseph is leading the young, the old, and everybody in between on foot through the mountains, the Rocky Mountains, dealing with cold weather, exhaustion, hunger, illness, you name it. For about 3 months and 1,700 miles, they managed to avoid being captured. His people are dying all around him. Canada is within reach, but he makes camp for one last time. That's his final mistake. The Nez Perce Indians are captured just 42 miles from the Canadian border. That's it. They run for 3 months and 1,700 miles and make it to within 42 miles of the Canadian border when they are finally captured. Then they are sent on another march to a reservation in Kansas, where almost half of Chief Joseph's tribe would die from disease. So a very famous quote, when Chief Joseph is finally caught up with, he tells them, "From where the sun now stands, I will fight no more forever." He just gives up. His people are tired. So a very sad kind of story of the Nez Perce. All right, and lastly, let's talk about the Apache. Okay. And their leader, down here at the bottom, is an Indian named Geronimo. 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 Okay. Now we're talking about the Southwest, sort of Arizona, New Mexico, Southern California, that area, okay, for the Apache. And the Apache were a very warlike tribe. Excuse me again. Hit and run tactics in particular. They don't fight, big battles, sort of small guerrilla tactics, small bands of Apache moving very quickly through the deserts, hitting targets and gone before you even know what hit you. They are very brutal, very hard to round up. And in fact, the Apache would be about the last tribe of Indians to be subdued by the U.S. government. They are split up upon being captured. The women were sent to reservations in Florida. The men sent to reservations in Oklahoma. And Oklahoma would be basically it was one of the last of the mainland states to become a state. It was just called Indian Territory. And in fact, most of the reservations that we have today still are in Oklahoma. So Oklahoma becomes kind of Indian Central in the southern part of the plains there. Okay. The picture you see there at the bottom, this is you might think that doesn't look very much like a warrior. That is an old Geronimo taken on the reservation in Oklahoma. It's a staged photo. They dressed him up in the Indian clothing here, handed him an empty rifle, and said, try to look mean. So that's a very old, broken down Geronimo. It's not the young warrior chief that gave the military so many problems. Okay, we'll talk some more about a couple of the other Indian wars in our next couple of slides.